Friends, welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. I'm so happy to be here today as your host. I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season. Now, I want to talk a little bit about grit before we prepare to go into the new year to give you some tools and tips that will see you through as you're dealing with students and trying to reach all learners. Now, before we get started, I want to definitely remind you guys that the Let's Get Gritty podcast will be aired on Swain Girl Media channel hosted by Precious Swain on Firestick. Also, I wanted to encourage you to follow me on social media. Let's connect. I like just collaborating with so many of you for so many different causes. My Facebook is Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. And my YouTube channel is India White 123. And my TikTok is Dr. India White. Also, check out my website when you get a chance at www.india-white.com for blogs, books, grit workbooks, equity books, or to schedule me for your next speaking event or professional development that you might have in your school. If you're having a PD day and you're needing an idea, I'd love to jump on a call with you to figure out how I can best support you as you're trying to close the achievement gap and motivate your students and your teachers. Now, I wanted to come in here and talk with you guys about grit and equity before we close the year out, because I think that it's just good to have a refresher and to remember why we are implementing equitable practices or why we're using grit to motivate our students and why we need each other to do it. So with that said, our topic of the show today is going to be how grit and equity work to help all students succeed. So again, we're going to talk about how grit and equity work to help all students succeed. So before we really get started, I want to first remind us what is equity, because we've heard of equity, dealing with like equity on a house and other things, but when it comes down to education, what is equity? What does that look like? So according to NCTM, the definition of equity in their article was, it is when you're, as a leader, you're providing resources and accommodations as needed to promote access and attainment for all learners. Again, it's when you're providing resources and accommodations as needed to promote access and attainment for all learners. So I want to challenge you right now to see, what is equity to you? So take a moment and see, without looking at the definition, what do you define equity as? Take a couple seconds, think about it. And I hope that somewhere in your reasoning, you're thinking it's something where you're serving all students, you're trying to reach all students, and you're, making accommodations. I hope that those words stood out to you, so that when you are trying to collaborate with stakeholders about why you're doing various equitable incentives and accommodations for students, that you understand what it is and why it makes sense for you. So I also want to go into the different lenses of equity. So we have 8 lenses here that we'll discuss. So equity can be approached in the lens of race. You can look at equity in a lens of gender. You can also look at it regarding ethnicity of students. You can look at it regarding the socioeconomic status of an individual. You can look at the disabilities of a student's religion. Also, emotional equity. How are they emotionally? Are they dealing with depression, anxiety? And then also mental. Is there a mental situation they're dealing with? Have they been diagnosed with a doctor or a psychologist that really shows that they're going to need a little bit more hands-on support from leaders when they are trying to navigate throughout their learning experience. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about how we can bridge the gap through equitable and gritty practices with our students. So, first things first is I want us to understand the role of equity and the role of grit. Again, I want us to understand the role of equity and the role of grit in the classroom. So, the role of equity in a classroom, usually you're meeting students where they are, okay? Then you're going to build stronger relationships with students. Now, students, you cannot pull wool over their eyes and convince them that you care if you really don't. They can pick it up and they know whether or not their leaders care for them. So we have to do concentrated effort to make sure that we're convincing these students we care for them, not only by what we say, but what we do for them, how we advocate for them, how we're, a sense of agency for them. Also, when you're trying to have a role of equity in the classroom, it's imperative that you enhance classroom discussion. So, what are you doing to build equitable, practices in the classroom to, enhance student voice? Are you giving all students a fair chance to respond? Are you using random selection? I heard of a teacher that has a wheel with all of the student names on it, like Wheel of Fortune. And I guess they made it up and they put the students' names on it and they would spin the wheel, and then, whoever they land on, they get called on. I think that's a very fair practice. Some teachers use popsicle sticks. Other teachers, I know another resource like Kagan talks about, like grouping students in groups of 4, but you can take kind of like a Kagan idea of where you label each desk, like say the first 4, A1, A2, A3, A4. Then the second group of desks are B1, B2, B3, B4, right? All the way out to however many students you have. Put all of the little cards, like you can laminate them into like these little itty bitty index card squares that you laminate in your library or whatever. Cut them up and then call on them randomly. Put them in a Ziploc bag or in a pouch or something, and then just don't even look at the numbers that you're calling. Just pull one out. Hey, I called D3, go to the board. Or hey, I called F2, go ahead and share. And that's a very, very, very random way and fair way and an equitable way to make sure that all students' voices are being heard. Also, what are you doing to make sure that students have what they need? And that if they're lacking resources, that you can provide resources for them, and that they're not going to be penalized because they don't have a pencil or paper or a pair of scissors in class. I really, that's one of my soapboxes is kids that get disciplined because they lack resources, because that's definitely an equitable issue. And we are, at the forefront to serve them and to make sure that we can provide those resources that are beyond their control. So now let's go into also talking more about those stronger relationships with your students. So when you're trying to build stronger relationships with students, yes, you must remain fair and, compassionate and use empathy with those students to let them know that you're not playing a respect of persons and that you really care about their every need. And that you're going to do what you can to help them be successful. Whether that's through small talk or if that's through extending them another opportunity to make up an assignment or connecting with the family to make sure that you're understanding the big picture as to what's going on in that child's life, that's very key. Also, when you're enhancing that classroom discussion, you want to make sure that you are, like I said earlier, giving all students a chance to be heard, but also praising students, providing feedback, and effectively scaffolding them to where you're not providing all the answers, but that you're building that rigor and that you're building that resilience in students by giving them an opportunity to share out, to work with their peers, and to show you, their level of comprehension of the topic. Also, when you're building mathematical discourse, it's imperative that maybe you follow the higher order thinking, Bloom's taxonomy chart, or maybe you pull up some math stems, which I absolutely love and I vouch for, or, give students an opportunity to analyze and to evaluate and to elaborate on their thoughts and their responses, because at the end of the day, it's not about, hearing yourself or always, giving the knowledge. Sometimes it's most important that we facilitate as leaders so that students can be heard in the classroom. Another thing is building that sense of belonging. Now, we cannot pull any tricks here and pretend like students belong when we really haven't provided an environment where they feel like they belong, especially in cultural groups. It is imperative that those students feel like they belong and that they are valued, because you don't know what they are hearing outside of your classroom. You don't know what they are experiencing outside of the classroom that's making them feel like they don't belong. Even though you might not have any experience with maybe feeling like you are isolated, or like you're a minority, or you just don't fit. It's imperative that you empathize and understand that children do suffer with traumatic experiences where they have been targeted, they've been bullied, they've been oppressed, they have been abused because of who they are and how they've showed up. Kind of counteract this negativity that they've experienced. It's imperative that you tell them, yes, I'm so happy you're here, just want you to know that I value you. You belong. And I'm so thankful to hear of your feedback. And, take moments to have active listening where you listen to those students, because some of those students, they don't really share out because maybe they're not, given a platform to share out. Maybe they're not valued enough to share out. And so they're holding on to all this wealth and all this knowledge and all of this potential. And sometimes they have nowhere to release that to, because people that they've been trusted to have not taken the opportunity to help them. So keep that in mind. Whenever you're building a sense of belonging, I'll tell you this. Whenever you've done an effective job of a sense of belonging, the guards will come down, the walls will come down. If somebody doesn't feel like they belong, if a student doesn't feel like they belong, their walls will be up. They will operate in defensiveness. They will not trust you. And they'll feel like, you're just being fake and you're just doing it for, just to get through the day or just for whatever. But they don't feel like you've really invested in them and that you really care for who they are as a person, or that you really care about what they have going on at home, or why they showed up late, or why they only did half the assignment. And I'm sorry, but they will tally up. They will make a case against you. You have to, pull out a survey and ask students to answer you anonymously as to what's working and what's not, and they will tell you the truth. And there's nothing better than being in an environment where you belong. If a student feels like they don't belong, they're going to be on guard and they're not going to be able to perform in their full, whole, brightness, because they feel like, the environment doesn't allow them to really open up and shine and thrive like they could. So best wishes with that. Best wishes into those rock stars out there that are already doing that. Kudos to you, and please share your knowledge, share your wealth with others that can learn from you, because you have so much value. So let your voice be heard. Now, I'm going to talk about the role of grit in the classroom. So grit, it gets to the root of hopelessness. So you have so many students that will just want to check out. There is nothing worse than failing a test, or failing a class, or just are dealing with the guilt, the regret, beating themselves up. Like, what if I studied harder? What if I wasn't as distracted? What if I, didn't get held back that year? Like, they have so many different things. And I think, like, sometimes we assume like, oh, they're just kids, that they don't really have any really serious, but it's like, wait, they do. And even if we think back on our own lives, we can think about situations that we had when we were teenagers that were very real. And some of those things, still, we are dealing with the trauma of those things even today. So, it's imperative that we get to the root of hopelessness, have those deep, genuine conversations with students. You must build a relationship with them in order for them to open up and be vulnerable with you, right? But to get to that root of hopelessness, and then providing a plan for students so that you can plug them back into hope so that they want to try again. See, the key is that you have to help students want to try again. Why did they stop trying, and why do they feel like it's better to give up than to try and to give it one more shot? Who's convinced them of that? What conversations are being had with them? What are they feeling in that environment that would make them feel that way, that there's no hope? We have to get down to the root of that so that we can help students try again. Then we want to enhance motivation levels for students. Once students progress in our classes and in our school spaces. And the way you want to do that is definitely remind them of what grit is. It's great resilience in time. You've got that grit, you've got that resilience. Continue to build the resilience with your positive affirmations, your optimism, reminding them of a growth mindset, reminding them of their progress and how they have done, and then increasing their grit levels by, for instance, if they turn in a worksheet and you ask them to do 5 problems and they only did 1. So praise them for that one that they did, and then challenge them. Hey, when I see you tomorrow, can you have 3 of those done? Okay, when I see you the next day, can you do 4? Can you do 5? You build up that progression of the students. You build up the volume of their work, and never criticize to where it's like, oh, that's all you did. Oh, I can't believe that, because we don't know what they went through the night before and we don't know what they're juggling. So it's imperative that we do what we can to just always be a cheerleader to support them. I want to challenge you. If you are a principal or a teacher in the classroom in the district, and you have direct communication, direct contact with students, or if you're a principal and you're directly, with your teachers, I want to challenge you for 30 days. Say nothing negative about performance. Say nothing negative. Try not to criticize, and you will see such a world of a difference. Thoughts come like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. Just check those thoughts at the door and say, nope, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be positive. And find the good in everything. Find the good in student performance. Find the good in teacher performance. And you're going to see that that's going to boost the morale around the school environment. That's going to boost the morale of your rock star teachers and of your students alike. So now the next thing you want to do is you want to help students meet their goals. So this is so imperative because so many students come to us as like sponges, and they're just open, and they're just curious, right? So how do we take that curiosity and hone it into a goal, hone it into a growth mindset so that they can be successful, so that they can achieve and they can evolve into independent thinkers, into successful citizens of society? Well, it's imperative that we do what we can to help them meet goals. So have those conversations with them and ask them, what are they aspiring to be? How are they doing in their classes? What is their GPA? Their GPA is a 2.1. Okay, let's get it to 2.5. Okay, let's get it to 3.0. Let's get it to a 3.4, whatever. Continue to raise the bar, continue to help them set goals over time, realistic goals. So they might need your help with setting goals of getting the grades up. So they might say, oh, well, I've got a 2.5. I don't really know how to get it up. Well, let's look at what you've got going on. So you've got 2 C's in these classes. Let's bring them up to B pluses. Yeah, next time I see you, I want at least B pluses or A's. See if you can help students with realistic goals that you know they can achieve over time. Okay, because when you do this, this is what's going to really give them a footing and a sense of purpose and direction so that they can go on and be successful. So, and a lot of reasons why students aren't successful is because they don't know how to set goals, or they're just kind of roaming around. They don't know that they need to have a particular amount of credits, or they don't know what they want to do when they grow up. Like there aren't any goals to aspire them. So when we start helping them with goal setting, that's going to definitely enhance their opportunities and their success rate in the classroom. Now, when you're looking at grit and equity together, it's really neat what they do together. They break down walls. They break down walls of mistrust. They break down walls of low motivation. They break down walls of, hopelessness that students face. Also, it provides access for students because when you are implementing equitable practices, you're always thinking, what else can I do to service this kid? What else can I do to help this child? What else can I do? What else do they need? That is the mindset of equity. What else? What else is there? What else can I do? And that's what we have to do, is we have to continue to keep that type of passion to want to serve kids, to want to provide for our students because they need us the most. And then, so whenever you are removing inequities from a classroom system, some things you want to keep in mind is you might have some pushback. There might be some veterans that'll say, hey, we've always done it this way, and there's no way I'm going to just start implementing this new system, this new strategy. There's one more thing to do. But it's imperative that you are convinced that if you're bringing about change for the good, that you have research for it and that you're convinced as to why you're investing and the end goal is to bridge the gap and to help students. And so you know that you've got something that's going to help. Communication is key whenever you're dealing with this, because if that communication isn't there, people will push back and will try to shut it down, will try to sabotage it. But removing those inequities, it comes with reflection as to what's working and then what's an area of growth and what do we see is like beaming at us as this is just not working for us. And then seeing what you need to do to take the proper steps to, dismantle it or to remove it however you need to. Okay, and now the next thing is providing a plan of action for academic success. So, I talk about different plans that you can put together in my grit workbooks for students. But when you're doing a plan of action for academic success, it's imperative that you have a starting point and an end point for students and a reasonable amount of time to meet it. Because at the end of the day, if the students don't know where they're starting, everybody's going to be shrugging their shoulders, right? So in order to create them from that, sense of feeling like they have to be responsible to come to you with the plan, meet them halfway and say, hey, I know you might not have all of this figured out, but listen, this is what I'm thinking. Tell me what you think about this. And then meet with them and then work it out with them, let them hash out the details with you, and then hold them accountable, whether that's through little weekly behavior sheets or academic progress sheets, or, meeting up with them quarterly for progress reports. I'm not sure how you're going to do that, but that's what you want to do. And then, of course, praising them as you're seeing the different checkpoints being met in their plan of action. Now, let's talk about some tips for effective implementation of equity and access in a school or in the classroom. First things first is leading with empathy and compassion. One thing about equity is that when you are truly trying to be equitable and reaching everyone and trying to close the achievement gap, it's going to call for you to be empathetic and compassionate. Now, for instance, I might not know anything about shoveling snow because I am a Florida girl. Never shoveled snow a day in my life. But if I was in a classroom and the student is talking about the frustrations of shoveling snow with their parents, I'm going to have to imagine myself in the snow, shoveling snow. I don't even know what that's like, y'all. Never done it. So instead of saying, oh, it's not that bad, whatever, just you'll get over it. Just stop complaining. You're fine. I really have to put myself in that child's shoes and then take a moment to reflect and say, wow, I wonder what it would be like to shovel snow. Maybe my hands would be cold. Maybe I would be frustrated. Maybe the snow's not always like pretty white like we see in movies. Maybe there's like slush and stuff. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I've not done it. What if it affects the car? What if, like the flowers in the garden? Like, there's so many things that I start thinking about, even now, as I'm thinking about shoveling snow, that I would have to really try to picture how I would feel. I would probably be super cold, shoveling snow. So when I'm talking to a student, they're like, listen, we had to shovel snow this weekend and I'm just tired and I just can't, I would take a moment to kind of take a step back and say, that must be tough. And then tell that child, like, hey, I can't imagine how much work that was for you. And, it's unfortunate that you had to go through that, and that took away from, what you were originally trying to do in this class. But just let me know, do you need extra? What do you need so that we can best serve you? And then move forward like that. So that's just a simple example of what I mean when I say leading with empathy and compassion. When you're looking at students and you can see that, maybe they are struggling, maybe they don't have everything, maybe they don't have familiar, family or guardian support, maybe they're taking care of siblings late at night. I don't know what the situation is. Having eyes of compassion where you're quick to show mercy before judgment and you're quick to reach out a lending hand to help so that they can have the support they need to be successful as students. So those are some things that you want to do. And then also, whenever you are implementing equity and access, it's imperative to go with your gut and to go with research. When you go with your gut and you go with research and you're doing what you know is right for students, you will err on the side of caution and you will err on the side of safety. And the choices you will make will definitely be more beneficial school wide than if you were to take a risk and do something that you know is just kind of going risk. It's kind of risky and it's going against the grain and it's not backed by research and it's you know maybe it's promoting something that has nothing to do with students or nothing to do with education. You need to stick with your gut and with research. And whenever you're going into various social groups of, you know, whether it's a school board meeting, a faculty meeting, or whatever, if you could present research to back up why you're passionate about trying new ideas or why you're implementing new practices, that's going to help back you up long term. Now, the next thing you want to do is ignore naysayers. Ignore naysayers because naysayers are certain to be there. And hey, it's a part of life. They have their right. They are entitled to their opinion. Somebody posted this, and I always think of this. They posted about an eagle, and they said that the only bird that tries to attack an eagle is a crow. And what it does is sees the crow, it sees the eagle's doing its thing, and so the crow comes up and it lands on the eagle's neck, and then it starts to peck at its neck and its back and all this like it's just evil, it's a hater, and so the eagle doesn't even mess with it. The eagle just continues to soar, and it soars so high that the crow eventually has to fall off and keep it moving. And so I thought that was pretty cool. So ignore your naysayers and just treat them like the eagle treats the crow. Just keep moving forward. Next thing is remain bold because whenever you are trying to implement equity and access, you're going to have a streak of boldness, not brashness, but boldness to where you're confident in what you're doing, you're moving forward, and you're not going to allow someone to throw a wrench in the plan and try to sabotage the trajectory of progress that you guys have been making over time. And then focus on the data. No one can argue with data. Data is your best friend when you're trying to bridge the achievement gap because the data doesn't lie. So I would say do a lot of data driven instruction as much as possible and data driven leadership as you can. And then, of course, communicating effectively with stakeholders and families and your educators and your students alike because people need to know the vision. They need to know. I know there's been some equity policies and some practices up north, I believe Tennessee area. I know that there are various equity frameworks that you can find like nationwide. If you just type in equity frameworks, you'll find them. Um, you can also partner with nonprofits to see how can you bridge the gap through equitable practices. So maybe they can provide scholarships. Maybe they can provide, you know, incentives for tutoring. Maybe you can do a pizza party at the end of a math boot camp or something like that. Maybe there are grants. You never know. There's so many different things and opportunities to really help, you know, with providing equitable practices for a school district or for a classroom. And then, of course, see if you can fundraise with stakeholders. Can you make a deal with Chick-fil-A or with Pizza Hut or with Starbucks and say, hey, I'm trying to bridge the achievement gap and I'm rewarding all my seniors that have at least a 3.0 or higher. And I would like to see if I can get $5 gift card for them, or they all get 20% off, or they eat for free. I don't know. Those are some ideas that I was just throwing out there for you for, you know, just trying to connect with the community and to implement equitable policies and working with stakeholders. Continue to do all that you can to build equity and grit in the classroom, in your school spaces. And just know that I am here to support you and I wish you the best this 2024 as you continue to move forward and progress as you are bridging the achievement gap and motivating students through equitable practices and through grit. And wanting to connect with me, my social media handle, Facebook is Miss India White, LinkedIn is the India White, Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. And my YouTube channel is India White 123. And my TikTok is Dr. India White. You can check out my website at www.india-white.com for blogs, and also to schedule me for your next speaking or coaching event. Also, feel free to reach out to me via email, india.white.123@gmail.com. If you're like, hey, India, I want to talk about something on the show. If you want to come on to the show, send me your photo and a bio, and we will get you slotted in whenever. And so with that said, guys, thank you so much again for joining this show. And until next time.